What's up, everybody? Glad you're back with us on Around the Association's podcast today. Hope you've been enjoying the men's and women's March Madness tournaments. Unfortunately, a pretty drama-free tournament so far for the men's, with the biggest drama for the women's being Juju Watkins' injury. So hopefully we see a little uptake in drama in the next couple weeks, but I digress. Today, got the chance to talk to former NFL offensive lineman named Frank Beede. Frank had a great college career, unlike any other, a great NFL career, a really interesting career after the NFL, playing arena football for 7 years. And eventually he won one of the NFL's most prestigious awards in his retirement. Frank's an incredible guy. He's hilarious. He's a great storyteller. So it's so much fun recording this podcast with him today and listening to his perspective on the game. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did, and take a listen.
You're listening to Around the Association.
Fires, puts it up. Bang! Steph Curry from way downtown. Jackson keeps Stanley in front of him. Touchdown, Lamar. Sugar on the breakaway. He scores. How's it go?
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Around the Association's podcast, episode 24. It's no ordinary episode because I'm thrilled to be joined today by former NFL offensive lineman Frank Beede. Frank, thanks so much for coming on today.
No, Webb, I'm happy to be here and happy to talk to you.
So Frank played for 4 years in college, was an all-conference selection in his senior year, played for the Seahawks for 5 years in the NFL, and then the San Jose SaberCats in the Arena Football League for 7 years after that. Now he's jumped into the world of teaching. He's currently the principal at his elementary school in California, where I'm assuming you just got back from.
That is correct.
And the blue skies behind him. California's a nice place. Just right off the bat, I just listed a bunch of things that most people can't even fit into one career, and you've managed to do it in the span of 20, 30 years here. When someone asks you, what for your story, where do you start, I guess?
Well, for me, what's interesting is, the athletic side of my career, I never knew was going to happen, right? I was a bookworm when I was a kid. I really didn't get into really true organized sports until my ninth grade year. And so those dreams and where I ended up in terms on the athletic side just didn't register with me, when I was a kid. And so it was interesting. When I first went out for ninth grade sports, I went out for Park Junior High, ended up being like 2 days late to the tryout. And so when I got there, there was only like two pairs of shoulder pads left and one helmet that really didn't fit my head. The shoulder pads are receiver pads. And I was already a big kid back in ninth grade. I was probably about 6'1", 6'2", even back then, And so it was a bit of a disaster my first year trying to play padded football. And so, I never would have known it happened. My sister, she was the athlete in the family, phenomenal, great student. In fact, she went on to UC Berkeley as well and got a history degree too and became a lawyer. She was phenomenal softball and soccer player. And so, I was kind of in her shadow a little bit when I was a kid. And then, my parents, they said, you were so bad, we need to send you to football camp. And so I went, surprisingly enough, because I'm a Bay Area kid. I was born and raised in Antioch, California. And so Berkeley was just 40 minutes away from my hometown. And my parents were like, you're going to Cal's football camp. And so I did that for 2 years. And after that first year, getting some real coaching, because our coaches did their best freshman year, but there's only 3 coaches for, a 60-man team. And so I didn't get a lot of individual coaching, but when I went to Cal, I did. Always competitive, though. And so that experience and just my competitive nature, sophomore year, JV year was a little bit different. I started that year, and then it kind of took off from there. But, didn't know I was going to end up a Division I athlete. Certainly didn't know I was going to end up on the Seattle Seahawks. And there's a lot more to that part of the story, too.
You were always a lineman just right off the bat in high school?
Yeah, well, mentally I thought I was a quarterback, maybe even a running back. But my body and my athleticism said offensive line. They say most guys, kind of do the progression. I think the last stop before offensive line is defensive line, and then they make you an O lineman. And so, I body type wise, I was kind of destined for that position, I think. And like I said, it worked out. But I was already, like I said, 6'1", 6'2", about probably 220, none of that good weight as a freshman. And so it was almost predetermined.
What I love about, especially the O linemen I went to high school with, a lot of them are guys that didn't play football in middle school or elementary school or any of that. But like they're just these huge guys that want to play football. So, they try out for the team and they just get thrown at line and they don't really know what they're doing besides pancaking people, but they just take so much pride in the position that football just becomes their life. They just love it. I've always thought that was pretty cool. I know you were a football player, a track athlete, and a wrestler in high school. What ultimately led you to deciding football was your path?
Well, you know what? I went out for ninth grade basketball and I got cut, and so that certainly helped. I just, it became a fit for me. We had a lot of success. I was talking about that JV year. We had a lot of success, went undefeated that JV year. Got me really excited about football. There's something to be said for just being part of a winning team. I'm sure you experienced that in your own sporting career. And when you're winning and you grow and you want to be a part of that, right? And you want to keep that feeling going. And so we had a great team that JV year. And then I got excited. We never quite were able to duplicate that in my junior and senior year. We were always kind of 500 after that. But we had some amazing players. Antioch was stacked. I mean, I had 3 guys go to the NFL off my junior year team, at Antioch. One was a 3rd round draft pick, one was a 6th round draft pick, and then myself, I was a rookie free agent. So, and all of us made the team and played a number of years in the NFL. And that's not even counting the Division I athletes that came out of that program during that time. So, just exciting to be a part of that kind of talent. Back then we played De La Salle, which you may have heard of. They were in our league. And so we were always competitive with De La Salle. Unfortunately, came up on the short end of the stick. Back then, these are probably some names you might not recognize, but they had a Monty Toomer, who was a wide receiver for the New York Giants eventually. And he was a stud. And then Aaron Taylor, who was an offensive lineman that ended up playing at Notre Dame and then a number of years in the league. So these were the kind of the teams we were against, the competition we were against all the time. And that really just got me excited for it. And then, you end up starting, I ended up not even starting really on varsity until my senior year, just because we were so loaded with guys. In fact, the guy that started ahead of me constantly reminds me that, you were my backup in high school. But he's a good friend of mine still. But anyways, yeah. And then all of a sudden, I told you I went to the Cal's football camp. And that second time I went, Coach Schneider at the time, it was his last year at Cal. He eventually went on to Arizona State. He called me in my office with my starting quarterback, and my starting quarterback was being recruited like he was, top 10 in the nation, for high school prospects. And in some ways, I thought maybe they were looking more for him than they were for me. But he pulls both of us in, and he goes, "I want both you Antioch boys to come to Cal on a full ride," even before our senior year. I waited one day and said yes. He, on the other hand, was wanting to go to quarterback U at the time, which was Stanford. And so he ended up going.
That was Mark Butterfield, right?
Mark Butterfield, that is correct.
Yeah.
Mark Butterfield, who his son Jay actually ended up kind of following his dad's footsteps a little bit. Ended up a heck of a high school quarterback, and then got a Division I scholarship to Oregon. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, and Mark, phenomenal athlete. I mean, oh my God, the guy could be on his knees and throw 70 yards. Just with a cannon of an arm, right?
Yeah.
And it's a shame, too, because I think if he'd have come to Cal, he'd have started as a sophomore and had a 3-year career. He ended up starting as a senior for Stanford. And so kind of didn't have as quite as long of a college career as I think he would have liked to have had.
Yeah, I mean, so I play on the turf with my friends a lot. We just sling the ball around, like blow out our elbows in the process, like making big catches. And it's funny because I was with a friend on the turf the other day, and one of his friends was there who was a high school quarterback. And we can throw it far, we can make some good plays, but this guy it whips his arm back, like barely any range of motion, but the ball just coming at you like a laser, and he can throw it so far. Like you can tell when someone is just either built for the sport or had some high school experience, even at minimum. Like they can just absolutely whip it.
No, without a doubt, but I mean, there's guys too that, sometimes, make it happen, with their intelligence or with their legs. I think about like even a Russ Wilson, right? In Seattle.
Yeah.
I took my son to his football camp. Russell Wilson on a good day is 5'10". And I would say he's more 5'8", 5'9", right? And
Yeah.
yet that guy, and he doesn't have. I mean, he has a good arm, but not necessarily a cannon. But he makes things happen with his football smarts. Gamer, right? I mean, just steps up when in the moment, and with his feet. He's getting a little older now, so he doesn't have quite the same footwork as he did maybe when he was a rookie or first few years. But guys like that, or I even think about I played with Gino Torretta, who was Heisman Trophy winner, right? He was surrounded with this amazing team at the Miami Dolphins, but definitely did not have the strongest arm in the world. When it came to say like a Warren Moon, who I had a chance to play with, who at 40 was still slinging it, and with the six pack too, by the way. So,
that's great. We'll get to Warren later. I mean, even some of the current quarterbacks. I mean, Brock Purdy led the Niners to the Super Bowl. Whether you want to say he was carried there or not, like he made the Super Bowl. He's not known for having a very strong arm. So Kirk Cousins too has had a couple great seasons in years past. So arm strength clearly not the only factor.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I would say this is that, you bring up Brock Purdy, right? He reminds me a lot of Russ, right, in Seattle, in that, you get a guy who's Mr. Irrelevant, right? And so you don't have this huge financial investment in your starting quarterback, right, which you normally would as a team. And so you can build this amazing team around that guy. And that's what happened in Seattle with Russ, and that, the Legion of Boom and all that kind of stuff on defense they had back then. Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. They could build this amazing team around him, but once they had to pay him, right, the big time starting quarterback dollars, all of a sudden all that starts to unravel. And you can kind of see that with the Niners now a little bit too, right? I mean, they had to pay Purdy the money, and now they're not able to get as many guys to build around him. And so you have that kind of tiny window. Now there's some guys who are just elite, right? You think about Mahomes in Kansas City, or you think about the cat up in Buffalo, or even the kid down throwing the ball in San Diego. I mean, there's some elite quarterbacks that can just take over a game, even at the NFL level. But those are few and far between. Most guys are kind of in that middle range to maybe great, good, but the greats are just a few select guys.
Yeah, it's funny, and I want to move on after this, but I saw a stat the other day that there's only one quarterback that's getting paid between, I think it's $10 million or maybe $20 and $35 million. It's Justin Fields, but everyone else is either viewed as a game changer. So they're making. I mean, I'm a Ravens fan, so I'm a Lamar guy, and I watch him every week.
Oh yeah,
those guys, they are truly game changers, and with the value that the quarterback position has, like you either are a game changer and you're making 40 plus, or you're just you're sort of brought in as a another piece of the puzzle and getting paid that veteran's minimum.
Yeah, pretty much, right? I mean, and you're right. Lamar's another one of those guys that I would say is definitely a game changer for sure. And but the Ravens had the past. I mean, when they had Dilfer or whatever, they built a team around that guy, right? And they were still able to win with that defense. But I think it's becoming rarer and rarer that you have this amazing defense. You have to have the guy, that's slinging the ball.
Yeah. Speaking of Wilson, just signed with the Giants for 1 year, $10.5 million. So he's getting a little money himself. Moving back into your college career. So you committed to Cal, as you said, pretty quick decision. Was that the best offer you had? And what other things about Cal, I guess, seemed like the right fit for you?
That's good. That's a good question. So, like I said, I committed before my senior year, right? So I was early on, and I honored that commitment. I did have an appointment to West Point and to play football there. So, talk about, different ends of the spectrum, both politically, geographically, and there were a few other Division I programs, smaller divisions like Washington State, Arizona, a lot of West Coast smaller colleges. But truly, I grew up. Cal was where I wanted to be. Right. I had grown up hearing stories from my dad about how he kind of missed out on his opportunity to play college football, and he actually had one time entertained playing at Cal, and so that's where I knew I wanted to be. I kind of talked to some of those other schools, but really that they weren't in the cards for me. And it was nice because it was only, like I said, 40 minutes from my hometown, which was a good thing, and also sometimes a detriment because I did spend sometimes more time, going back and forth to my hometown than I, getting that true college experience. But once I starting my sophomore year and really delved into getting involved with football and committing to football, all of a sudden the hometown stuff kind of moved away from that and really started to focus on Cal and my career, seeing how far I could go.
Yeah, it's funny. So I actually go to school like 35 minutes away from where I live as well. So when I was doing the college process, I was like, I got to get at least 4 hours away from here. And now that I'm here, I don't understand why. I mean, I didn't know, but I can take the train home anytime I want, which can either be, every couple weekends or absolutely never at all. So it can be nice being close to home, but I get, once you sort of delve into something as, I guess, intensive as the football team, you sort of forget about it all. So that makes sense. Your first season, you went 10-2, won the Florida Citrus Bowl. I know you mentioned you're a winning guy. So what was that like, just win right off the bat as a freshman?
Yeah. Oh, man, it was great. And I tell you what, those two losses, one was to Washington, who went on to eventually be the co-national champion with the Miami Hurricanes. And we lost that game by 7 points. And in fact, Brian Treggs, who was wide receiver on that Washington team, he's the Seattle Seahawks kind of point man for the alumni. And so we go back and forth every year about that game because, Memorial Stadium where Cal plays in Berkeley, normally you see about 50 or 60,000 people. It was 85,000 people in that stadium. I mean, they were sitting in the aisles because they ran out of space, on the seats, and they even put in extra bleachers on top. Just that atmosphere to be a part of that game. We were both 5-0 at that point in time. Obviously, UW went on to be undefeated, that was great. And then, of course, our arch rival is Stanford, of course, the big game out here. And we lose to Stanford, who had like 3 wins that year, which was just hard. It was hard.
Well, you lost to Butterfield then.
Well, technically, yes. Neither of us were on the field at that point yet.
Yeah.
I did lose Butterfield. I will say this, though. Every time I started at Cal against Stanford, we won. So, that's my caveat there. It was a great season. We go down to Florida to play Clemson, East Coast versus West Coast. All we heard about was ACC and how great Clemson was. And, they were going to wipe the floor with us. And and there was some little back and forth. We were, you do various events of those bowl games where you go around to these different places and have joint events. And, there was some John going back and forth, even pregame stuff. And then we just took it to them. I mean, they may have hung with us, I think, the first quarter, but the talent, Mike Plowski was our quarterback then. He went on to a great arena career. We had Brian Treggs as a wide receiver. We had Russell White as running back, Anthony Wallace as running back. They were phenomenal, eventually NFL guys. Sean Dawkins, who was a wide receiver in the NFL for a long time, first round draft pick with the Colts. So it was just a loaded team. And then, honestly, one of the all-time greats at middle linebacker. I mean, he led the Pac-10 in total tackles like 3 years in a row, is a guy named Jarrett Willard, who was even drafted, even with 2 bad knees and 2 ACL surgeries, was drafted in the 3rd round by the Kansas City Chiefs out of college, just on the potential alone if he could actually come back from that, because he was so talented. I mean, just playing with those guys, I mean, it was amazing. And in our offensive line, phenomenal as well. Every guy played in the NFL off of that offensive line and the subsequent offensive lines to come.
That's awesome. So Clemson's obviously had their fair share of lore in the 2010s. When you guys beat them, were they that level of team, or were they still developing?
It was a New Year's Day bowl game, right? I mean, they were a top talented team at that time. That that you're going to put me on the spot if you ask me to name anybody on that team at that time, because I don't recall. But I mean, they were a really good team. Every prognosticator was saying that they were going to crush us. I mean, I think they had like a 10-point or 11-point spread over us, and that is not how it happened. So.
Well, you mentioned Miami. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I know College Game Day came to Cal this year for a Miami-Cal game. I don't know if you got the chance to see any of that. That was a brutal finish for you guys, because I think it was like 38-25 with a couple minutes left, and then Cam Ward went ballistic. What was that like, Game Day coming to Cal? And then I don't know if you watched that game, but what was your reaction?
All right. Well, first of all, painful. Very painful.
Yeah.
But I was actually in Europe at the time. I went with my daughter to Oktoberfest in Munich. And so I'm sitting in a hotel. I think it's like 3 a.m. and I'm like, I got to turn the game on, right? And I just caught the game when it all started to turn. And in fact, I blame myself in many ways, because the moment I turned the game on is the moment Cal took a nosedive. And so maybe I was the bad luck turning in from Europe. I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
probably.
yeah, I blame myself. But anyways, yeah, no, that was tough. Although college game day, I mean, I heard they said it was like one of the best college game days they've ever been to. That kid kicked the game winning like field goal, and
Yeah,
earned himself some cash.
yeah.
And just the atmosphere around that. I mean, college game day is really great, anyways. But I heard kids were lining up for like 2 days to get into the college game day, and so just it was a great atmosphere for Cal. Put the team kind of back on the map a little bit. Even though last year wasn't necessarily a great year, I think they ended up like 5-6 or something like that. But they had a lot of talent, and I really was excited for this upcoming year for Cal. But then with the portal and everything, they lost their starting quarterback and they lost a couple wide receivers, and it's kind of a shame how that works nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what they can do this year.
It's funny because college game day is so used to going to like Auburn and Bama, Clemson, Ole Miss, all these schools, that when they went to Cal, especially McAfee was making such a big deal about like, these kids are such intellectuals. He was getting so high. Like the kid who made the field goal, he wasn't even talking about the kick. He was like, this kid's smart. This kid gets it, the high IQ. And
yeah, well, I'll tell you. I mean,
yeah.
obviously on the education side right now, I work with kids, and Cal's turning away 4.5 kids, in their engineering program. So I don't know how you do better than that, and still get turned down from a 4-year college. Now, of course, I was not a 4.5 coming out of high school, and so thankfully football got me my ticket into Cal. But I did get my piece of paper, my degree from there. So I feel very proud of that.
Not quite the accomplishment. And by the way, I just looked up the Clemson game from 1991, 37-13. So you guys did boat race them. That was, in fact, not a lot.
We got on them. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little closer in the first quarter, but then after that, we just turned it on in the second half, and they were done.
They're at a loss for words. The next season, so you went 10-2, won the Citrus Bowl. Next season, you went 4-7. So once again, I know you said for you winning is what it's all about. What was that like, going from such a high to such a low?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a struggle. So, as I said, Bruce Schneider, who was the head coach, he leaves and goes to Arizona State. Back then, and even still to this day, right? Cal doesn't necessarily invest in their athletic program. It's not like Texas, putting 100 plus million into their athletic program, right? And so Coach Schneider, he went for the money, better pay at Arizona State, which I don't fault him. He had a great staff. Steve Mariucci was his offensive coordinator. Mooch actually recruited me, and just Mike Waffle, defensive line coach, longtime NFL coach. They had some good guys, a lot of talent. So they go to Arizona State and actually tear it up down there and do great. Keith Gilbertson comes into us from University of Washington. So he was the offensive coordinator for that co-national championship team the year before. And he comes to us, and, Gilby was a good guy. I think his struggles is that it's kind of like when Mike Holmgren came into Seattle. Everything was about Green Bay and how we did it in Green Bay, and this is why we won in Green Bay, and and that's all we kept hearing. Same thing for Gilby when he came into Cal. It was like, this is how we did it at UW. This is the UW way. This is how the dogs do it, right? And you don't necessarily want to hear that when you're a Cal Bear, right? I hate the horn that University of Washington. It's painful to listen to. They have a great fan base, but not necessarily something I want to necessarily emulate, right? I mean, I like the winning part of it, but I don't want to be a Husky. I want to be a Bear. So I think that he lost the team a little bit in that. And then it's just transition's hard, right? When you have an entirely new staff, it takes time to adapt. And so I think that first year was that kind of melding it all together.